Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to another special edition of In Other News. As promised last time, when we looked back on the World Leaders in Review of 2011, let's now take a little podcast time to look ahead to the coming year, because if you pay attention to these things, and you must if you're watching this podcast, 2012 is actually going to be a huge year of possible turnover for world leaders as well. Perhaps more than 2011 was. I know. Did you hear that being reported by any news sources anywhere on planet Earth? Of course not. They're all clueless. They just all duplicate each other's stories. So I want you to be smarter and more aware of what's getting ready to happen. So, in other news, what's ahead for 2012 with world leaders? What up with world leaders in the coming year? Well, because of the events of last year, we do already have a significant turnover of world leaders, and mostly due to the Arab Spring. Unfortunately, all of the leaders that got chucked out of the Arab Spring in places like Tunisia and Egypt and Libya, they haven't been replaced with anybody of consequence yet that we can point to. Tunisia held an election, but the people are kind of unknown. No one's really sure yet who's in charge of the country. Egypt and Libya don't even have anybody of note that's stepped up to take charge of the country. So new leaders are eminent in those places, but I can't even tell you who they are yet. Nobody can. However, there have been some other significant changes of faces of 2011 that these folks' mettle is going to be tested in 2012, and that specifically I'm referring to is North Korea, which saw the demise of Kim Jong-il. Ding dong, the Jong is dead, and replaced by his puffy second son, who looks like the kid from Up, Kim Jong-un. The Kim, as we like to say. Without rehashing what you probably have already heard 10 million times from 10 million other places, no one knows squat about this guy. No one's really sure what is going to happen, what he's going to do. Is he a puppet? Is he going to open up the country? Is he going to continue his father's chaotic drive towards nuclear weaponization and insanity? Is the military going to take over? Nobody knows. So we're going to see what happens with Kim Jong-un in the coming year of 2012. But also lesser-known figures that have turned over that are of some consequence to European affairs mostly, but also the world economy, are that Silvio Berlusconi, of course, finally got chucked out of Italy, and now the new prime minister is Mario Monti. And Mario Monti is going to be tested. He actually took office about a month ago, but again, still so new, we're not sure if he's going to last, what his policies are going to be. Mostly they're dealing with economic stuff, and I haven't really researched the guy, but he seems sharp as a tack. Really, really smart guy, not corrupted or corruptible by most people's definitions. So Italy looking forward to perhaps a better year of trying to keep their economy going and not get the country bankrupt under Mario Monti. Another one that you probably haven't paid attention to at all is Spain. And Spain's, I mean, it's a European power, and it's a top 20 economy, I believe. So it is of some significance, and they have had, they chucked out their center-left leader just in 2011, at the tail end of 2011. I think he finally just stepped out of office in December. And he was replaced by Mariano Rajoy. I know nothing of this guy, but he's the new Spanish president. And the reason I point these two guys out is it's kind of very interesting that both Spain and Italy have new leadership, because it's both Spain and Italy that the Europeans are most terrified, or the countries that are going to go bankrupt next, following Greece's lead. So it's a big deal for these new leaders in these two very specific countries in Europe who have a lot on their plate to deliver on in 2012. We'll see if they manage to keep their countries afloat. So watch Italy and Spain, Monti and Rajoy. Now, other things going on in 2012 that may be of more dire consequence to your personal life are that there's a whole lot of other really important leaders stepping down, either stepping down or they're up for re-election, or possible just turnover of leadership due to political circumstances. I'm going to go through the list fairly quickly. Some of these you probably know. It's election year in the United States! Hello! Now again, that election doesn't happen until November, so most of 2012 will be gone before we find out if Barack Obama is going to get a second term or if it's going to be Newt Gingrich. Not. Who's the guy who probably will be running? I forget, Katie. He used to be charge of your state? The
Mitt Romney.
Mitt Romney. So we're likely to see the Rominator versus Barack Obama in November. And who knows? Political cycles in America to me are quite actually totally unpredictable at this point. But who knows who the American electorate will decide to throw into the ring and vote for come November. However, it is election cycle, so it's a big deal for the Americans. Of not great consequence to me, quite personally. I find the stuff banal at best, boring at worst. So that will be all-consuming for the Americans, the election cycle coming up in November, which may see a possible turnover of leadership. One place that is not going to go through the election cycle, but is going to have a big turnover of leadership is China. That's right. You haven't been paying attention. You heard it here first. China, of course, ain't no democracy. They ain't having an election, but the term, I don't know if it's a term limit they call it, but the Communist Party, they just put up their candidates. It's an internal party thing. It's kind of like a corporation. The heads of it just get together and decide who's going to be in charge of the country next. And that is happening this year. 2012, President Hu Jintao and Premier Wen Jiabao, the dynamic Chinese duo, will be stepping down. This is preordained. This isn't up for debate. It isn't that they've done a bad job. It's just that their time is done. And I don't know what the term limit is. I don't know if it's like, is it a 10-year run or a 12-year run? Because it seems like those guys have been in power for about that long. But whatever this Chinese cycle is, it's up. So we will see brand new leadership in China. And of course, that is of tremendous world consequence to see what the next leaders of China have in store for that country and the world as China evolves very quickly into its superpower status. With very little reservations, I don't know who's going to win the American election, but I can tell you who's going to, with great degree of confidence, who's going to be the next Chinese leader, and the guy's name is Xi Jinping. They kind of groom the next leader years in advance before they actually take office, and most speculists and analysts have looked at this and said, yeah, it's this guy named Xi, that's X-I, Xi Jinping will be the next Chinese leader. Staying in the neighborhood, Taiwan is up for an election cycle this year as well. President Ma Ying-jeou, who is of the political party in Taiwan that's not the Independence Party. So President Ma has been in charge for about 4 years. The economy of Taiwan's not been in great shape. He could lose the election. However, he is of the party that is much more into smoothing out ties with China, increasing trade with China. Not necessarily saying, yes, Taiwan's a part of China, but they certainly aren't the political party that's the opposition, which is the pro-independent Taiwanese Independence Party. My good friend Eric Lin, the man on the street in Taipei, Taiwan, has told me that this one's up is going to be kind of a crapshoot too, very similar to the American election. It's fairly close, with several candidates in the ring right now, and so that one's too close to call as well. But Taiwan could be up. China is definitely up for new leadership in 2012. Taiwan could be. Staying with this trend of elections in 2012, France has a big election this year as well. Again, it's much like the American presidential election. Nicolas Sarkozy is up for re-election. He can run for another term. Who knows if he's going to win? That's another too early to call. The election is happening in 2012, and his popularity, I think, is at an all-time low. The same could be said of Barack Obama as well. But it's possible that both of those leaders of both of those countries will rally and get another term. I don't know with Sarkozy, though. France has not been doing well, and really any kind of trial or tribulation here in the months leading up to the French election could see the downfall of his political party. The opposition party, the kind of center-left political party in France, has been gaining some ground and gaining a lot of support. So we could see the end of Nicolas Sarkozy in France this year. Again, it's just possible. I don't know, but it's leaning towards that right now. I'd put more money on Obama winning in the U.S. than I would put on Sarkozy winning in France right this second. Things could change, but that's right this second. Let's go. Let's stay in Europe for a couple more. Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel. I don't pretend to understand the dynamics of the German political system. I don't pretend to understand the dynamics of any political system. But she is kind of like a prime minister. She does not get directly elected. The chancellorship does not get directly elected. It's who's ever in charge of the Congress is who gets to put the candidate forward, who's the Chancellor of Germany. And to me personally, she's done a bang-up wonderful job. She's one of the most popular leaders, I think, in Europe. one of the most popular leaders on planet Earth, and one of the most powerful women on planet Earth, if not the most powerful woman on planet Earth. She's done a lot for Europe, and she's done a lot to kind of keep the Eurozone and the whole European Union held together in this extremely trying time, this what's going to be a double-dip recession for Europe. However, she's not put in office by the world or by the Eurozone. She's put in office by Germans, and her political party has been taking hits. All of 2011, they have been losing elections, regional elections around the country. And there's another big regional election coming up, I think, in a few months in Germany, and everybody's watching it. If her political party loses that one, then it's entirely possible that the governing coalition that put her in office may start to disintegrate. And at that point, I don't know what happens next in Germany. I don't think that's going to happen, but my German friends are telling me it could. So Angela Merkel, even though she's done a great job, could be in some political angst if her political party continues to lose elections. We'll watch that one as well. And now let's go to Russia, where there will be a presidential election in 2012. In fact, that one's coming up soon. It may be the first big election on planet Earth in 2012. I think it's in the next few months. And that is the presidential election that will see Vladimir Putin run for his old job. He was the president of Russia from 2000 to 2008. He has since been prime minister. They had the constitution changed so that the term limits in Russia went from 4 years to 6 years, and because of that change, this allowed him to run again. It was a 2-term limit, and it still is, but they're saying, we changed the term limit, so Putin's eligible again. Everyone in Russia kind of knows that they changed all these rules in their own constitution simply to allow for Putin to run, and everybody thought that was going to be fine and dandy, and he'd win again and be in office for the next 12 years until all this shit hit the Russian fan here in the last few months, and now there's been popular support against him, and he got booed at the wrestling match and all that other stuff. I'm going to go ahead and throw out the professor prediction on this one. He will win. I still believe he will win the presidential election. There are a bunch of rich Russians, some super millionaires and billionaires who have said they're going to throw their hat in the ring to run against him. But at this point, I don't know if even despite all the street protests and the cracks in the Putin armor that have suddenly appeared, he still has, I believe, an overwhelming support of perhaps half the Russian population, and that's all you're really going to need to win an election. So I'm still going to say that Putin will likely win it. We will see current President Medvedev step down and future and once again President Vladimir Putin step up. By the way, side note, I think it's a real shame. I think Medvedev, who could have easily ran for another term and likely would have won, he stepped down intentionally so that his old boss could step back up. And I think that's partly what got them into trouble, because it just looked so much like just an inside job. And it's like, dude, Medvedev, you've done a decent job, and people kind of like you. Why would you step down? Don't ask me, ask Medvedev. I would like to see, by the way, Medvedev run again. I think he's probably better for the country of Russia right now than Putin is. That personal call is a non-Russian. Anyway, I think Putin will be back. We're going to see a turnover of leadership in Russia. And I'm going to throw in a few more here because I'm never quite convinced that everything's as stable as it appears. In parliamentary systems that exist in the United Kingdom and in India and Canada, these are leaders of all these countries are seemingly secure right now in that they have their political parties are in charge of the Congress or in charge of the Parliament, and therefore they get directly nominated up to be the leader. And I'm speaking of David Cameron and Manmohan Singh of India. So they appear to be okay right now. Stephen Harper of Canada. They appear to be okay right now, but 2012 is probably going to be a chaotic year. And there's all sorts of chaos going on in India right now with corruption charges. And Manmohan Singh himself, I believe, is starting to be tired of being the Prime Minister of India because there's so much stuff going on. So it's even though all three of these leaders of these parliamentary systems are kind of on solid footing at the beginning of 2012, and there's no kind of eminent big elections on the horizon for any of these countries, things could disintegrate rapidly in any of these places because they're all based on what we call ruling coalitions. That is, David Cameron's party is actually in league with another or two other political parties who have gotten together and said, we together have a majority, and so we together are going to put David Cameron up as the Prime Minister of Great Britain. I'll pick on Cameron for a second more. Cameron's government's getting ready to enact all these austerity measures where they're going to be slashing benefits and cutting pay and retirement benefits. And this is going to piss off a lot of people in Great Britain. So it's possible that happening, along with perhaps some other foreign issues, with perhaps wars or something, that could tear a coalition apart very quickly when the rubber hits the road. And that could happen in Britain at any time. It could happen in India. It's possible it happened in Canada, although I think that they're pretty solid for 2012. So I just like you to think about, there are these places that don't run on the kind of presidential election cycle that the U.S. does, that they, while stable right now, who knows if they'll last throughout the end of the year. I'd say of the three I just mentioned, Manmohan Singh may be the one who says, I'm getting tired of this gig, I might step down. I don't think he's going to, but it's possible that he might. And a couple of others that are of great significance, actually, on the world stage. Mexico is also up for election this year, and current president Felipe Calderon will definitely not be the president of Mexico this time next year. How can I say that with such authority? Because Mexico has a one-time 6-year presidential term limit, and he's done. Now, why would I suggest that's of great consequence to you Americans? Who's in charge of Mexico? It's so pathetic that Americans have no clue what's going on in Mexico. It's a gigantic country south of our border. It's one of our number one trading partners. And there's also this whole thing with the war on drugs that's going on there that's spilling over into the United States. Whoever's in charge of Mexico and their particular policies towards drugs, towards trade, towards immigration, that has a huge impact on what goes on in America. Luckily, Americans stay completely blissfully ignorant. I don't know who's going to win the next Mexican election. I don't think Mexicans do either. That's another toss-up. It's very much like America. There's kind of the left and the right, the Democrats and the Republicans, although they're called something else in Mexico. And it's fairly evenly split. I will tell you this. Lots and lots of Mexicans have grown increasingly unhappy with the center-right conservative Calderon government because of the war on drugs that has seen spiraling death rates, murder rates, kidnapping rates over the last 6 years this guy's been in office. I personally think he's an okay guy, by the way. But I believe the tide's going to turn against him and his party, so look for a center-left guy to go into Mexico. And again, why is that important to you? Because a center-left guy is going to have very different policies towards the war on drugs, towards trade, and towards immigration than a center-right guy would in Mexico. So you're going to see perhaps a lot of policy change enacted in 2012 if new left-leaning leadership goes into play in Mexico. And finally, another leader who has already vowed he will step down, and we have no idea who will take his place, is Mahmoud Abbas, the kind of leader, president, grand poobah of Palestine. Of course, Palestine is not a state, so I don't exactly know what his true title is, but he has been large and in charge and kind of in command of, Palestinian policy for years and years. I don't even know how long the guy's been in charge, like a decade? And he, I believe, because he knew he was going to step down, is one of the reasons that he was really ballsy in 2011 and pushed forward that UN resolution to just outright have Palestine recognized by the UN and not bother with the peace process or anything else. People do crazy stuff like that when they know they're getting ready to walk out of office. So he has vowed he's not going to run again for office in 2012. I think his actions of 2011 speak louder than words. He definitely will step down, but we have no idea who will be in charge of the Palestinian Authority, which is kind of the government of Palestine. We have no idea who's going to be up next. And again, why would I suggest that's significant? Because if you get a radical guy in there, then they're going to have pretty radical policies of what Palestinians may end up trying to do or do in 2012. I'm not saying they're going to, but I'm saying that's why you got to pay attention to who's in charge, what's going on, what are the political opinions of the people who are making these big decisions in states and even non-states around planet Earth. And I will wrap up this 2012 looking ahead to world leaders with leaders that I believe personally, are not likely to survive the coming year. Now, you guys know all about the World Leader Death Watch. So there's some obvious ones that make it up there all the time. I will once again, for perhaps the 12th year in a row, predict that Fidel Castro can't possibly survive another year. All right? He's not really in charge of Cuba anymore anyway, so that's not that big a deal. Robert Mugabe, I can't see making it another year in charge of Zimbabwe. He has been in ill health. Of more consequence to world events, I can't see how Bashar al-Assad is going to survive the year in Syria. I don't know that he's going to get killed. He possibly might. But the Syrians are up in arms. There's now Arab League observers in there trying to quell the violence, and it's just going to keep getting worse. There's no way this guy is going to survive in power in Syria for another year. His days are numbered. He could have done a lot of things to ensure that he did stay in power, but he's done none of those things. So I can't see how he's going to stay in power throughout 2012. I'm going to assume he's probably going to retire quietly to France or someplace crazy like that. The other person who is definitely not going to last through 2012 is Ali Salah, the president of the president of Yemen. Ali Salah has already signed a pledge that he would step down, I believe, by the end of February. He has been embattled and blown up and attacked both by people in his country, but the international community, and he's had so much pressure and so much heat by everybody that I do believe he will finally this year step down and allow someone else to try to rule the chaos that is currently Yemen. In another part of the planet, I can't see how Asif Zardari, President Zardari of Pakistan, is going to last another year. For those of you that follow my podcast, you know I did one just a few weeks ago where Zardari had a stroke and was emergency evac'd out to UAE, and he's back in the country, but there are threats of military coups against him, and his popular support is pretty low. He's done a horrific job as the leader of Pakistan, and there's so much violence and so many characters involved in the struggle politically behind the scenes in Pakistan. I'll be surprised if he makes it the year. He should retire if he had any damn sense, but not all political leaders have that. So I'm going to make the prediction that Zardari will not last the year in Pakistan. And just as a kind of a fun closer, because all those other ones were really involving violent overthrow, my final prediction of a leader that will not make it through 2012 is Yoshihiko Noda. Yoshihiko Noda, who is the current Prime Minister of Japan. Now, do I see something on the horizon that other political analysts don't, that he's in trouble, that Japan's in trouble, that something's going to happen? Nope. I don't know that anything's happening in Japan right now. But Yoshihiko Noda is a prime minister, is the 6th prime minister of Japan in the last 6 years. You do the math. No Japanese prime minister has made it a year yet in the last 6 years. So just playing it safe. This is a safe bet, safe money. Yoshihiko Noda, who I have nicknamed Yoda. Yoda will likely not make it the year either, to be completely in line with all the past prime ministers of Japan in the last decade. Okay, does that help you understand the world a little bit better? I hope so. Are you from any of these countries? Do you have any disputes about this? Do you have other leaders that you think are in trouble or are going to step down, or some elections that I may have missed? Please write them down here in the comment section and let me know what's going on. And I believe the next podcast, if you so choose, will be to look ahead at some other global themes and predictions of what's going to happen in 2012, also incorporating some stuff that happened in 2011 to make those predictions for 2012. What do you think about that? Cool. Party on.